Welcome to an early Sunday morning edition of a Facebook Live, a Florida Times Union Facebook Live. I'm Jaguars beat writer Phillip Heilman. Joining me after the Jaguars' 17-6 victory over the Atlanta Falcons is columnist Gene Frenette. Gene, before we get into anything really about the game or the stats or anything, Jaguars lose receiver Marquise Lee today to a left knee injury. Happened in the first quarter. Actually, the first play of their second drive. Lee caught a 20-yard pass. Safety for the Falcons comes in, hits his knees, had to be carted off. What's your level of concern?
Well, the first thing that has to pop in your mind is you wonder if the Jaguars are reliving the nightmare of last year where they lost Allen Robinson on the opening series of the season opener against the Houston Texans. He was also gone for the year as well. And just the way Marquise was carted off and the way that he was writhing in pain almost immediately after the hit by the safety Kazee from the Atlanta Falcons, it just didn't look good. And then we get to the post-game press conference, and even Doug Marrone acknowledges that it looked bad without actually getting an X-ray or an MRI.
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody's expecting good news coming tomorrow. So with that in mind, if Lee is lost for part of the season or more, or maybe even all of the season, it just means, like last year, unproven guys are going to have to step up, whether it's DJ Chark as a rookie, and again, Keelan Cole and Dede Westbrook have experience with this last year when they did step up a little bit once Allen Robinson was gone. So maybe they'll be able to fill that gap. But it's obviously a huge concern when your veteran, most experienced receiver goes out.
Yeah, one name that I think is going to be really important if Lee is out for a while is going to be Donte Moncrief, a guy the Jaguars signed to a one-year deal, but he is more of a veteran than you have in Westbrook or Cole or Chark, and he's just made plays in the NFL before, and it looks like he's sort of starting to trend in the right direction. He had the knee problem early in camp that kept him out for a while. Didn't really seem like he was on the same page with Bortles, but he had 3 catches for, I believe, 62 yards tonight, including the 37-yard catch and run on the slant where he made a guy miss. Really showed off that he can still run a little bit. That's a guy to me that, he's got the experience where he can say, hey guys, we're going to be fine. Marquise Lee was going to be our veteran leader, and I can take on some of that role. And on the field, the more that he develops a chemistry with Blake Bortles, the better it is for the offense.
Well, the other thing you got to remember too about Donte Moncrief, and I think this is also very important as well, he signed a 1-year, $9.6 million deal. So he's on a prove-it contract. He's in a contract year. So setting aside the Lee injury, even if Lee was perfectly healthy, this is a crucial year for Donte Moncrief, because if he wants to see any kind of big money, he's going to have to prove it this year. And now with Marquise Lee, let's say Marquise Lee is gone for the year. Well, now other teams as well as the Jaguars are going to look at him and say, look, if you step up and you provide the kind of weaponry that the Jaguars need to fill that void, it's only going to make you a lot of money next year. So he has every incentive in the world to be that guy. The question is, can he step up and do it?
Yeah, it's a real bummer for Marquise Lee, a guy who I think is very well respected within the locker room and in the media. A guy who, he missed 9 games his first 2 years, and he sort of got that injury label slapped on him. But over the last 2 years, he'd only missed 2 games. Late last season with the ankle injury. The year before, he played all 16 games. So he sort of moved away from that. The Jaguars rewarded him with the 4-year, $34 million contract. It sort of felt like he was trending in the right direction. It felt like, he had established his role in the offense. He had outlasted Allen Hurns. He had outlasted Allen Robinson here. Obviously, it's a little bit of speculation on our part because we don't know exactly how long he could be out. But certainly, in talking to the receivers and talking to Doug Marrone and even Jalen Ramsey afterward, everybody pretty much expressed a sentiment that certainly they're fearing the worst. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball, where for the second straight game, the Jaguars' defense, I thought, played superb against an offense that you'd expect to be one of the better in the NFL. Last week, it was Kirk Cousins holding him to 12 passing yards. This week, Matt Ryan, he led a field goal drive, but I think overall the Jaguars did pretty good. What was your takeaway?
Well, the very first series, I thought that was the only time that Ryan was effective at all. He got the team marched him about 50 yards. But listen, Matt Ryan, it's not as if Matt Ryan at times didn't have a little bit of time out there, but even when he did, he really couldn't click on any kind of big plays whatsoever. And the thing that I found very intriguing tonight was the Jaguars threw some wrinkles in with with the corner blitz. I mean, DJ Hayden had 1 sack. Jalen Ramsey came within a whisker of getting a sack himself. Miles Jack got in there. Yannick Ngakoue wasn't credited with any sacks, but he beat the tackle twice pretty badly and got some pressures that forced some incompletions. I'm thinking that this Jaguars defense, again, if it can stay relatively healthy, I think you're going to see the Jaguars set the single-season sack record this year. They almost got it last year when they had 55 sacks. The record is 57 in 1999. I think you're going to see that mark go down, and I think tonight and last week against two quality playoff teams from the NFC, you saw the quarterbacks just have terrible games, and I think that's an indication of what this defense can be for the rest of the year.
If I set the over-under right now, 59.5 sacks for the Jaguars defense this season, you going over or under?
I'm taking the over because.
So you think they get to the 60s?
Because keep in mind, you only have to average 4 sacks a game, or even barely under 4 sacks a game to get to the 60 mark. And I think this is a team that's going to do it, because I think what's going to happen, while they may not have, they had 2 10-sack games last year. Yeah, I'm not saying they're going to have. I'm not saying they're going to have anything like that. But I think you're going to see this team have games where they have 6 or 7 sacks, maybe 3 or 4 times this year.
Yeah.
And I think that's how they get to 60.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say, you only have to average 4 sacks a game. That's really tough to do. I think that really goes to show you just how talented the Jaguars are, not only on the defensive line, but at the linebacker spot. DJ Hayden, I thought, had a really nice game today, a guy who they signed to fill in for Aaron Colvin, who left for Houston. They have just so many guys who can do so many different things. Matt Ryan was sacked 3 times tonight. One guy we didn't even mention, who I thought was the best player on the field for the first drive, was Malik Jackson.
Yeah, well, listen, if you're going to get to 60, you can't just have Calais Campbell and Yannick Ngakoue doing having, let's say, 40% of the sacks.
Right.
You're going to have to, the linebackers are going to have to do it. Miles Jack has got the athleticism and speed to do it. Telvin Smith has got the same thing.
I think Jacobs is going to be
and if you get the cornerback blitz going, so I think there's going to be enough diversity on that defense, and Todd Wash is going to be able to send a lot of different people to the quarterback. I think a lot of offensive coordinators in this league are going to have plenty to worry about when it comes to this pass rush.
That starts week 1, September 9th with the Giants. Let's flip over to the other side of the ball, stick at the quarterback position. For Blake Bortles, it was a night where it went pretty well until it didn't. 17 of 23 passing for 204 yards. You'd say, hey, pretty good. But 2 interceptions.
Well, the thing that would concern me about Blake is his inconsistency. He can look really, really good one drive, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get a mistake that makes you go, oh, geez. Like that second interception he threw tonight. I mean, he led D.D. Westbrook too far to the right, and he just put it right in Wilson's hands. Mm-hmm. And it's just a killer interception. You're in the red zone already. You figure okay, we're gonna get at least 3 points out of this, and then you don't get anything at all. And again, just like last week, there was a couple near interceptions here again tonight.
Yeah.
KZ, the same guy that put out Marquise Lee, he almost got interceptions on back-to-back plays.
Yeah.
And there was another one where
the shovel pass to T.J. Yeldon where Blake was about to get sacked. That's just a decision that is a horrible, horrible decision to just flip the ball over your head. Even if you feel like T.J. Yeldon is a pretty good pass catching back, you just cannot have the ball floating in the air like that. That's a play that I thought more than any of them that Blake should be beyond. To me is a concern.
It was a very Jameis Winston-like play.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston has a reputation for somebody will be in the grasp and and instead of just taking the sack, he tries to make a play. Now in this particular instance, if you go back and watch the tape, what Blake tried to do was kind of like a shovel pass, kind of out, trying to get it out into the flat. It's okay to try that if your guy is wide open.
If there's
nobody around there. But that wasn't the case
No.
in this particular instance. And it was a very bad decision on Blake's part.
He's got to be beyond that.
He's got to cut down on that, because those are the kind of killer plays that cost you ball games, and in the postseason, it can end your season.
The red zone interception was interesting to me because Blake was so good in the red zone last year. He did not have a single red zone interception last year. I think it was 18 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Do you count that one as sort of a one-off of guys, Blake and Dede not necessarily on the same page, or do you think it's a little bit more of a concern because that's the area of the field where you cannot possibly turn the ball over? If this is not going to be an offense that's going to consistently put up 28, 35, 42 points a game, and they don't need to be with this defense, but what they needed to be is efficient in the red zone, and they weren't tonight.
Well, if you look at the replay of that play, it looks like Blake simply led the receiver too much, but there might have been something else at play there that I don't know about, because Blake is not going to be the one. Blake is never going to throw a receiver under the bus, and I'm certainly not suggesting that D.D. Westbrook was at fault at all, but we just don't know. I would say, looking at it at face value, it looked like Blake wasn't under a whole lot of duress, and he just led his receiver too much.
Blake's backup, Cody Kessler, 7 of 7 for 79 yards tonight. Made a couple of nice runs as well. He's a guy who just continues to stack good practices and good games on top of one another.
Well, at this point, he's certainly looking like an upgrade over Chad Henne. Not just because of his accuracy, but he gives you a little bit of a scrambling threat. Certainly not as good as Blake, but he made a nice play on the 3rd and 8 tonight. Scrambled through some traffic up the middle for 12 yards, moved the chains, and he's staying away from turnovers. And that's all you can really ask of your backup, because if Cody Kessler can go in there in a pinch and even just be a game manager, even though that sounds like a negative term. With this defense, that might be all you need out of your backup quarterback. Yep. So he continues to impress as well.
I will say, Cody Kessler, if you're going to scramble, learn to slide. The last real run of the game where he got the first down, where the Jaguars were able to kneel out, his head got slammed into the turf so hard. Just slide, buddy. Just slide. You played a great game other than that. But you got to take care of yourself. Availability, as Doug Martin always likes to say, is almost the most important ability. So he's playing well. Does it ever get to a point where there's a quarterback controversy, or is this Blake's team?
No, I think this is Blake's team. He's not going to be pushing. He would have to have such a catastrophic meltdown, like over a couple of weeks for I think for the Jaguars to ever consider the possibility.
Yeah, I don't
of Cody
think
Kessler.
No talk about quarterback controversy, but certainly I do think it's helpful that you've got a backup quarterback who's on his rookie contract. Chad Henne was not on his rookie contract. I mean, he was making $4 or $5 million a year. Over 2 years of Cody Kessler's contract, you're saving yourself $8, $9, $10 million that. Certainly in the future, having that a little extra bit of money will help. Let's move on to something else. What were 2 or 3 takeaways before we go that you thought were interesting? Maybe wrinkle offense, defense. What did you see?
Well, to me, the most interesting thing was watching Leonard Fournette and Corey Grant be on the field at the same time. I don't know how many plays that happened. I want to say it was probably about a half dozen. It seemed like, but when they were on the field at the same time, the Jaguars were able to get some positive plays out of that offense. And and I talked to Corey a little bit about it tonight, and he says he loves that package because the defense, they've got to be worried about both of those guys, and if they key on Leonard, they can go to Corey, and if they key on Corey, they can go to Leonard, and they love that package. They put it in late in OTAs, about late May, maybe early June, and now they're Marone said that he wanted to put it in the games of the preseason because he didn't want to unveil it in the regular season, go into it cold. So now you've given the New York Giants and New England Patriots certainly something to think about those first 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I was advocating for more of that after last week's game when TJ Yeldon and Leonard Fournette were on the field together, and they threw a screen to Yeldon, and Fournette had a nice block, and it was 11 yards. Just the 2 running back looks, to me, is really interesting because there aren't a ton of teams who have the luxury the Jaguars do in having 2 really athletic linebackers. The Jaguars have Miles Jack and Telvin Smith. A lot of teams in the league, you have 1, but it's very rare that you really have 2. So when you have 2 running backs on the field, you have to sort of split the defense a little bit. There's a lot of opportunity for mismatches where maybe you can get your guy on the linebacker who the team that you're playing is just kind of trying to hide.
Well, not only that, you've got 2 or 3 running backs with totally different styles, too. That's the other thing. I mean, Corey Grant is such an explosive speedster that he can just go, and if you give him any kind of a seam, you're not going to be touching him probably for another 10 or 15 yards at least. And obviously Fournette with his power and TJ, it's always great to have flexibility and to have new wrinkles. And I think this is something that it's going to become more and more part of the Jaguars package as the season moves on, especially if you've got a receiver core that's maybe a little bit iffy or a little bit, experience depleted.
Yeah, definitely. Blake was sacked twice tonight. Once was when left guard Andrew Norwell was beat. It was the first time that we've seen Norwell in the preseason. We've really not seen the full starting line. Even tonight, no Brandon Linder at center, so we have not seen the full slate of starting offensive line for the Jaguars. Are you concerned at all from what you've seen from Norwell, or is it just a guy trying to shake off the rust a little bit?
Well, I don't think we've seen enough of Norwell or even the whole offensive line together to make any kind of judgment. Right. I mean, let's face it, going into the regular season in 2017, though there was widespread concern about the offensive line.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
And then we got into the regular season and everything seemed fine. So maybe that'll be the case this year. I find it hard to believe that this offensive line won't be able to be sort of as productive in pass protection and with the running game as they were last year. Listen, they don't need to necessarily be better numbers-wise than last year.
No, their numbers were good.
But they do need to be better at closing time when you're trying to close out games. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I'll be paying attention attention to more so than just the flat-out numbers.
Yeah, without the benefit of film review, I thought Cam Robinson looked better tonight. You didn't notice him getting beat as quite as often. And I think A.J. Cann at the right guard position, a couple of times on runs, it seemed like he was leading the way into the second level. I think that's a guy heading into a contract year who if you're the Jaguars, you have to feel really good about.
Well, listen, we all know that next year we don't know what's going to happen with Jeremy Parnell.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you're trying to sign all these other young guys like Jack and Ngakoue and maybe even Ramsey to these contract extensions, well, it's going to cost somebody. You've got to make some deductions somewhere else to accommodate all that salary cap. And it could be that Parnell could be a guy that might have to go by the wayside, or maybe one of the safeties goes by the wayside, and you get Harrison in there. But as of right now, I'm okay with the offensive line. Do I think that everything's great right now? No, not necessarily. But after last year, seeing how well the offensive line performed after they looked like very below average and mediocre in preseason, I don't have as much concerns as you normally would.
There we go. So that's our recap from the Jaguars' 17-6 victory over the Falcons Saturday night. Now it's Sunday morning. The Jaguars will be back on the field against Tampa in the final preseason game Thursday night. Then it's cut down weekend. Jaguars going from 90 to 53, and then before you know it, it'll be week 1 at the Giants.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how much attention the Jaguars pay to the waiver wire when players become available, because I still think they need to do something about their depth at linebacker.
I agree. For Gene Frenette, I'm Phillip Heilman. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.